Hello everyone, this is Julia. Thank you so much for joining me for another card making video today. As I mentioned in a previous video, I did take a little bit of a break and now I'm back with a new crafty video. Today I'm making a pop-up box birthday card and I really had so much fun making this, so I hope you like it. First, let's go over all the products. I'm using Sunny Studio Stamps Candy Shop for all the candy elements. Then I'm going in with Beach Buddies, and I'm using the little cat and also the sun hat. All of my supplies are always listed below the video in case you're interested. Then I'm using Meow and Furever, the little chubby cat, and also the one with a bunch of hearts. And I'm using Tiki Time for the bottom of my little candy stand. For my dies, I'm using the Sunny Studio Stamp stitched rectangle dies, and I'm using the second to largest and also the fishtail banner. Then I'm using the Sweet Treats house add-on and just the roof part to create the roof for my little candy stand. To create my box, I'm using the My Favorite Things outside the box and shadow box dies. I don't own the square backed, like the basic outside the box die set by My Favorite Things. So I just used the back panel of the shadow box, which is the same size as the regular box card. Then I'm using the outside the box grassy hills and also the level up side and front panels. I stamped out all of my images onto Bristol smooth cardstock, and I'm using my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers to color them in. For my gray, I'm using 94, 97, and 904. I'm blending everything out with a colorless blender, the 999, and I'm also using a little bit of the color 200 for the cheeks. And I also put a little bit on the insides of the ears of my cat. And now I'm just going over everything. I have a scratch piece of Bristol smooth cardstock to clean off my blender if I need it. And I'm just blending everything together. For my brown shades, I used 16:8 and 64, as well as the colorless blender. I'm just laying down my darkest shade wherever I thought that they would be shadows, like at the edges of all of the panels of the Tiki bar, or in my case, the little candy stand. Not being careful at all because with zig markers you can always just blend it out since they're water-based. Then I'm going in with number 64, just going over the darkest areas first, just to blend them out. Cleaning off my brush tip before I can move on to the next one, because otherwise it would just get darker and darker, so I always quickly clean off the tip of the brush pen. And now I'm going in with a colorless blender. I ended up going over a lot of the white areas with more of the number 64 because it was just too light. Just adding a little bit of color there, like you said, like you saw, just basically scribbling it over because the real blending I do with a colorless blender. As you can see, I'm always moving my hand back and forth because I'm using like the scratch piece of paper just to make sure I get everything blended out and I don't pull like too dark a color from the ink that's left on my colorless blender. For my paint combination, I'm using the marker 200 and 202. I'm just blending out the 202 out with the 200, just adding a lot of shading, pulling the color in further, then going in with a colorless blender, just to blend everything out. I'm going over all of the edges. and pulling in the pigment further into the lightest area. I wanted to deepen up the pink color a little bit more, so I'm just bringing in a bit more. Again, blending that out. And as you can see up top, I actually created a bit of a smudge, so I recolored this image off camera. Then I'm going in with 803 and with 80 for the purple. Again, with a colorless blender. For my blues, I'm using 32 and 37. I'm sorry, 31, which is like a true blue and more of a teal. And mixed, I thought they looked really nice together. And then again, blending everything out. Going over all of the areas where I laid down the blue color with the teal, and then pulling out the color with the colorless blender. Then I also wanted to add some shading to all of the white areas on like my little candies. So I'm using the second to lightest of the gray markers, and I'm just using the colorless blender just to add a tiny bit of definition there. To create my box card, I used a box card die set, but you don't need a specialty die set to create your own box card. So on screen, you can see all the pieces you will need. The main panel is 4.5 by 3.5 inches. That's the back panel for the box card. The front of the card is a strip of cardstock 4.5 by 1 inch, and it's scored at 1/2 inch and 4 inches. It's hard to see. In person, you can actually see the score lines way better. Then for the angled pieces, it's a piece of 2.5 inch by 2 inch cardstock, and then it's slanted from 2 inches down to 1 inch. And it's scored at 1/2 inch from the tall side. The little shelves that I'm using, the grassy pieces, are 4.25 by 1 inch tall, and it's scored at 3/8 of an inch and 3/7/8 of an inch. To create those, you can just use any kind of border die, clouds, grasses, whatever you want to create for your box card, and then just cut off the little tabs and score them like I wrote down on the measurements. I will also link to the Sunny Studios blog post in the video description so that you can see all the measurements there as well. Now I'm using the roof piece of the Sweet Treats house add-on, and I'm ink blending that with spun sugar and Kitsch Flamingo. Then I'm using the Silk & Echo Sheer Shimmer Spritz in the color Sparkle just to add some shine. And I used the panel that I die cut with the second to largest stitched rectangle dies by Sunny Studio. And I'm ink blending that with a cloud stencil and tumbled glass and shaded lilac distress oxidings. Just to get a bit of a fade there, I ended up going over the second cloud border and just added a little bit of shaded lilac there as well so that there's a nicer transition. And now I'm adding some shimmery splatters and also some of the blue and the purple. Now I'm ink blending all of my grassy panels, and I'm using cracked pistachio and evergreen bough to add some color to those. Just going in with a base layer of the cracked pistachio and then adding some evergreen bough at the top. I realized that I had some more like yellow toned green from a previous project on my brush, so I just quickly wiped that off. I just added the darker shade up top, and then I'm just using my lighter colored brush just to go over it and smooth it out. And now I'm using some water and the evergreen bough to add darker splatters. Here I'm just cutting down the roof pieces. I just used the inside notch of the scallop just as a guide where to cut my pink roof pieces so that I would have a white and pink striped roof. Now I'm just using some liquid glue to glue those down. Now I realized that the roof is actually much bigger than what I would need for the bottom of the tiki bar. I use the third score line on my scoreboard. This actually is numbered on mine, but it's between 1/4 of an inch and 1/2 inch to just add a little fold to create more dimension in my roof. Then I'm adding all the accessories to my critters, and I'm also assembling my little candy bar. So I used the bottom of the Tiki bar, then the little Twizzler sticks from the candy shop stamp set, and then I'm adding my little scalloped roof, which is just so adorable. Then this little kitty, I just wanted him or her to have like a little huge heart-shaped bonbon. So I just added the little bonbon pieces to either side. I wanted one to peek out behind the arm, so I just draw in a pencil mark to line it up. Used a pair of scissors just to trim it down, and now I'm just gluing it in so that it looks like the top piece of the wrapper is just tucked behind his arm. And then I'm also adding in the candy floss, which is just so cute because it's like twice the size. And now it's time to assemble my box. I'm folding along all of the score lines. And to assemble my box, I'm using liquid glue. I'm just adding a strip of liquid glue to the flaps for the back pieces, or the side pieces of the box. Just lining them up with this one with the left side and the bottom, just to make sure it's all straight. Doing the same thing on the other side, lining it up with the right side and the bottom, and giving it a little bit of time to dry. Then I also added some liquid glue to the left flap of the front piece, and I glued that down to the side, just making sure it lines up nicely. Then I started adding in my little grassy pieces. I always find that it's easiest for box cards to add those shelves in while you're assembling the box. You can always do it later or add more if you want, but it's a lot less fiddly if you do it now. Just again, adding some liquid glue to the flaps, and I'm adding those in. I'm using the slanted edge just to increase the height of my panels, which just gives such nice dimension, as you can see. I started adding liquid glue to the flaps because I wanted to close the card, but then I realized that it would be much easier to add the background panel first. But there you can already see how the card will come together. I just added liquid glue to my cloud panel, added that in, and that also hides the little flap pieces that we glued down at the back panel. I just trimmed off the flaps of my fourth grass piece and glued that straight to the background, just making sure it's a little bit taller than the last of the little grassy hills. And then I'm folding over all of my little shelves as well as the front of the box card. I'm adding liquid glue to all the flaps, and then I'm just folding the card shut. Since I'm using liquid glue, I gave it a little bit of time to dry, held it shut. Now I'm just moving it back and forth to both sides so that I know that the box will fold nicely into the envelope. For my sentiment strip, I used the fishtail banner from the stitched rectangle dies. And for the sentiment, I'm using Sweet Birthday Wishes from the Candy Shop stamp set. I ink blended the side panels of my box with the same colors as the fishtail banner, and those are the same inks I used for the cloudy background. For the sentiment strip, I'm being super careful when gluing that down. I stamped that with VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and that always takes ages to dry, so I just tiptoed around, making sure that I didn't smear my sentiment. Then I cut off the top of my little roof just to make sure it lines up nicely with the top of the box. And then I'm adding my cute little cat in the center, and I'm using the little two big lollipops just as a backdrop for my candy stand. And then I cut off the white border of one of the purple little candies because I always find that those integrate into the scene nicer, and then I just added that with liquid glue. Now I'm just adding a second one just to fill up the stand a little bit more, and then I'm just adding that to the last shelf of my card. The big candy floss kitty is going on the right side of the middle shelf, and then the little chubby one goes right in front. And if there was a stamp of me, it would be like a little chubby one with holding like some type of candy, so I just had to bring him in there. Then I'm just adding some more elements to the scene. I'm using a jelly roll pen in the size 10 just to add some gel pen highlights to all of my images, adding some dots to the candy and also like a few little highlights. And that finishes off my box card. I had so much fun making this. I think it turned out so cute. Those images are just so adorable. I just absolutely adore pop-up box cards. They're just so fun and such a lovely gift where your recipient can display them easily later. And I had so much fun making this one. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. It would really help out my channel. Subscribe for more crafty inspiration if you enjoy this kind of content. I would love to have you. And I hope to see you next time. Until then, have a wonderful day. Bye!